when my friend became my worst enemy. Before we begin the story, make sure to subscribe to our channel and never miss more incredible stories every day. You forced my hand, Ryan said, staring at me across the projector light like I was the one who had gutted his life. The room behind him had gone silent. Half my coworkers were standing near the catered sliders. My sister Ava was by the back wall with her arms crossed, and Marcus looked like he might throw up. Ryan's voice came out low and wounded, practiced enough to sound sincere to anyone who hadn't spent the last 9 years believing every word he said. 3 months earlier, if you'd told me that sentence would be the last thing my best friend said before everyone saw what he'd done, I would have laughed in your face. Ryan was the guy who knew where I kept my spare key, what coffee I ordered when I'd slept badly, and which anniversary wrecked me every October because it was the date my mom died. He was the person I called from emergency rooms, tow lots, and empty parking garages. People used to joke that we were basically brothers, except brothers usually fought more. We didn't. Not really. Ryan was too easy to love, and I was too relieved to be understood. I'm Daniel, 30, operations manager for a sports marketing firm in Columbus, Ohio. My life wasn't glamorous, but it was solid. I worked hard, paid my rent on time, showed up early, and had the kind of reputation that takes years to build and one ugly rumor to destroy. By the night Ryan said those 5 words, I'd lost a promotion, a relationship that had barely started, most of my social circle, and weeks of sleep wondering whether I was paranoid or just pathetic. The sickest part is that Ryan never came at me from the front. He wrapped every hit in concern. He told people I was going through something. He offered to smooth things over. He warned me not to trust anyone while he quietly made sure no one trusted me. By the time I understood that, he had already stepped into spaces that used to belong to me. And the worst betrayal wasn't even what he said about me at work. It was what Ava slid across my kitchen table on a Tuesday night. Ryan and I met at 21, in the most uncinematic way possible, arguing over a dead car battery outside an off-campus apartment. My jumper cables were garbage, his alternator was dying, and somehow we still ended up at a diner at 1 in the morning talking like we'd known each other for years. He had this thing about him. People leaned in when he spoke. Not because he was loud, because he made you feel chosen. He remembered tiny details and brought them back at the perfect moment. Your favorite beer, your ex's name, the story you told when you were tired enough to be honest. Ryan collected people by making them feel seen. Back then, I thought that made him rare. Maybe it did. Maybe I just misunderstood what kind of rare. We became inseparable fast. He helped me move twice. I sat with him in urgent care after he broke his wrist on black ice. When my mom died, he was the one who stood in my apartment the next morning washing coffee mugs because he said silence felt cruel. Years later, when his dad cut him off after some family fight he never fully explained, I handed him cash and told him to pay me back whenever. He hugged me so hard my ribs hurt. You're the only person I never have to perform for, he said. I believed him. Everybody loved us together. At birthdays, people would ask if Ryan was coming before they asked if I was. At work happy hours, he'd swing by just for one drink, and somehow leave knowing the names of half my office. He fit anywhere. Marcus once laughed and said Ryan could talk his way into a locked bank vault with nothing but a smile and a sad childhood story. Ryan grinned and said, only if Danny opens the door first. That was our joke. I was the stable one. He was the charming one. I thought loyalty meant history, and history meant safety. The first time anything felt wrong was so small I hated myself for noticing. I told Ryan, in confidence, that I was thinking about asking a woman from work to dinner. 2 days later, at a bar after a client event, a junior coordinator nudged me and said, so are you finally asking her out? Or are you going to overthink it again? There was only one person I'd told. Ryan laughed before I could ask why that sounded familiar. I asked Ryan about it that night like it was a joke, because that's how you test a person you don't want to doubt. We were outside the bar waiting on our rides, neon from the sign cutting across his face. Did you tell people about me asking out Lauren? I said, because apparently my romantic hesitation is now team entertainment. Ryan blinked once, then gave me that easy shrug. I might have said you had a crush. Relax. I was hyping you up. It sounded more specific than that. You tell me things, Dan. Sometimes I forget what's private and what isn't. He said it like a flaw so small it would be rude to make him feel bad for it. Then he clapped my shoulder and changed the subject, and I let him. That's the embarrassing truth about betrayal. It rarely starts with a scene. It starts with a moment you file away because admitting it matters would change too much. A week later, Lauren stopped replying. Around the same time, a client pitch I'd been told I was leading got handed to someone else. My director avoided eye contact and said they needed someone less distracted right now. Distracted by what? Exactly, he never said. I walked back to my desk feeling like I'd missed a meeting where my own life had been discussed. Ryan, of course, was the first person I called. That's ridiculous, he said. You're the most reliable guy there. So why am I suddenly distracted? He exhaled into the phone. You want the honest answer? Obviously. Some people think you've been off lately. Quiet. Tense. I told them you've just been overloaded. I stopped on the sidewalk. Who thinks that? He was quiet a beat too long. Dan, don't do this. I'm trying to help. That sentence lodged under my ribs. It sounded generous. It also sounded like a man standing beside a fire with a bucket after handing someone else the match. Still, I told myself I was spiraling. Work stress makes patterns out of static. Maybe he really was covering for me. Then, 2 Fridays later, I found out I wasn't invited to Marcus's birthday. Ryan's explanation came too fast and way too polished to trust. Marcus's birthday was at a sports bar we'd all been going to for years, the kind of place with sticky menus, too many game feeds overhead, and bartenders who knew what you drank before you sat down. I found out from an Instagram story posted by someone I hadn't even spoken to in months. There was Marcus, Ryan, 2 guys from our old apartment complex, and 3 people from my office standing under a neon sign like nobody thought the missing body in the photo might notice. I texted Marcus first. Didn't know you were doing something. Hope it's a good night. He responded 10 minutes later. Small thing. Ryan said you were wiped from work and probably wouldn't come. I stared at the screen so long it dimmed in my hand. When I called Ryan, he picked up laughing, music loud behind him. What's up? You told Marcus not to invite me? What? No. I said you seemed stressed. You told him I wouldn't come. Daniel, come on. He asked if you were doing okay. I said you've been weird lately and maybe needed a night off. Why are you telling people I'm weird lately? His tone changed instantly. Because I've been worried about you, man. You've been isolating. You barely answer texts. I'm upset because you're at my friend's birthday without me. There was a pause, then a softer voice. This is exactly what I mean. That line did real damage because it made me feel insane. Not angry. Unstable. Like every reaction I had could be folded into a case against me. Things kept stacking. 2 coworkers stopped, including me on group lunches. A woman I'd gone out with twice sent a careful message saying she didn't want to get pulled into anything messy. My office key card stopped working one Monday morning because building security said someone reported I might have been letting non-employees into restricted areas. I hadn't. Ryan always had an explanation. People exaggerate. Someone's confused. I'll clear it up. He said these things while becoming the only person patient enough to manage my supposed mess. Then Ava came over, looked around my apartment, and said, "You know he likes you better when you're cornered, right?" I told her to get out before she could say something worse. Ava didn't leave right away. She stood by my kitchen counter, keys in her hand, looking at me like I was 13 again and lying badly. My sister has never had much patience for performances, which is probably why Ryan never quite charmed her. He tried. He brought her coffee when she visited, remembered the names of her dogs, asked about her grad program like he cared. Ava always answered politely and then, the second he left, would say, "He's too smooth." Real people hesitate. That night she didn't soften it. "Every time something falls apart around you, who ends up in the middle of it?" she asked. Ryan is in the middle because he's helping. He's in the middle because he inserted himself there. I laughed, but it came out thin. You don't like him. That's not evidence. You want evidence? Fine. Last month at brunch, he told your friends you'd been struggling again before you even sat down. Then when you showed up late, he acted relieved, like he'd been worried you wouldn't make it out of bed. He was joking. No, Daniel. He was framing you. I told her she was reaching. I said grief made me weird sometimes, and Ryan had seen the worst of it. Mostly, I said anything that would let me keep the story I preferred. The one where I wasn't dumb enough to hand my life to the person slowly dismantling it. After Ava left, Ryan called. "Are you good?" he asked. "Marcus said you sounded upset earlier." "I'm fine. Your sister there?" That caught me. "Why?" He laughed softly. Because every time you sound like this, Ava's been in your ear. I sat down at my kitchen table. You two talk about me? Only because I care about you, man. She thinks I'm trying to control you. I think she likes having you dependent on family. The crazy thing is, that landed. Ryan always knew where to place the wedge. By the end of the call, he had me apologizing for being distant. 2 days later, he stopped by my apartment while I was still at work to drop off soup because I'd mentioned a headache. He still had my spare key from years earlier. That night, while rinsing out the container, I noticed my desk drawer wasn't fully closed. The drawer was where I kept things that mattered enough to hide, but not enough to lock up. My passport, old tax documents, and a small notebook I used when my head got too loud. I'm not proud of that notebook. It's full of ugly, unfiltered sentences I never intended anyone to see. Dates I was afraid of. Fears I didn't want to burden people with. Questions like why do I always trust charm before character? The page I'd written in the night before was no longer where I left it. I told myself I was imagining that too. Then Ava texted me a screenshot. It was from a fake Instagram account with no photo and 6 followers. The message had been sent to a woman from my office I'd gone out with twice. It read, "Just so you know, Daniel gets intense fast. He reads into things and can get unstable when people pull away. Be careful." I felt my face go cold. The wording was what got me. Not unstable. That was ugly, but generic. It was gets intense fast. I'd used those exact words about myself once, in my kitchen, talking to Ryan after Lauren stopped replying. I had said, maybe I just get intense fast and scare people off. Ryan had leaned back in his chair and told me I was being hard on myself. Ava called before I could type back. "One of my friends knows the woman who got that message," she said. She sent me the screenshot because she remembered I hate Ryan. I was already pacing. That doesn't prove it was him. No, Ava said. But you know why it sounds like him. I did. The phrasing. The timing. The way the account followed people connected to me and almost no one else. An hour later, Marcus made it worse. He texted, "You free to talk?" We met at a coffee shop near my office, late enough that the place smelled like burned espresso and mop water. Marcus kept rubbing his thumb over his cup sleeve. Finally, he said, "Ryan asked me not to mention this, but he told me a couple months ago you'd been checking up on people. Like showing up places uninvited." I didn't believe him, but he made it sound like he was protecting you. Protecting me from what? Marcus looked sick. From yourself. That was the moment denial finally lost its grip. I went home, sat in the dark, and opened every message Ryan had sent me. Once I stopped reading Ryan's messages like comfort and started reading them like evidence, the pattern was ugly. He texted in clusters right after something in my life went wrong. Lost the pitch. "Hey man, hearing weird stuff? Call me." Girls stopped replying? Hate to say it, but I think people got the wrong impression. Friends go quiet? Don't chase them right now. Let me talk to them first. He was always first to know, first to interpret, first to volunteer as translator between me and the damage. I made a spreadsheet because I needed something colder than emotion. Dates, times, incident, who knew what Ryan said before, during, and after. March 3rd, office rumor about me being distracted. March 11th, Marcus' birthday miscommunication. March 18th, anonymous DM to woman from work. March 21st, security report about restricted areas. Every line had Ryan somewhere near it, like smoke clinging to a room after the fire is gone. Marcus helped more once he saw I wasn't fishing for reassurance. He checked old group chats and found Ryan had privately told 2 guys from our old apartment that I was having one of my rough cycles and might not come around much. One replied, "Should we reach out?" Ryan answered, "Give him space. He spirals when people crowd him." That message was dated 4 days before I stopped getting invited anywhere. I started noticing smaller things too. Ryan would reference conversations he wasn't in. He knew I'd asked Naomi from HR for extra time off before I'd told anyone outside work. He asked whether I'd ever fixed things, with Lauren in a tone that implied he knew exactly why I hadn't. When I scrolled far enough back, I found voice notes where he coached me on how to phrase apologies for problems I never caused. At the time, it had felt supportive. Now it sounded like rehearsal. The worst piece came from my building's package room camera. My manager let me review footage because I said a delivery had gone missing. On the Thursday Ryan dropped off soup, he left my building 43 minutes after he texted, "Left food on the counter." I watched him glance over his shoulder before pocketing something rectangular from his jacket. That was when I realized he hadn't just been talking about me. He'd been inside my life, rearranging it with his hands. The rectangular thing Ryan pocketed turned out to be one of my old leather notebooks. Not the private one from the drawer, the nicer one I used for work ideas, client notes, random observations. I realized it was missing after tearing my apartment apart at 2 in the morning. At first, that seemed almost less serious, until Marcus called the next day and asked a question that made my skin crawl. "Did you ever pitch a community partnership idea for the Columbus Fury account?" he asked. "Yeah. Why?" "Because Ryan mentioned it last week like it was his." That account mattered. It was a minor league hockey client we'd been trying to expand with youth outreach events, and I'd spent months building a proposal around local clinics, school visits, and sponsor tie-ins. I'd only shown the rough version to my director and, stupidly, to Ryan over beers because he liked hearing about big-picture stuff. He'd flipped through my notebook and said, "This is smart. You make boring things sound important." Marcus kept talking. "He was at Doyle's with 2 guys from your office. He said he'd been helping you shape it because you're good at operations, but not always at the room-reading side." I had to sit down, not just because he was stealing credit, because I suddenly understood the scale of it. Ryan wasn't only poisoning my name when I wasn't around. He was stepping into the holes he created, explaining my absences, translating my moods, offering my ideas back to people in a friendlier voice, reintroducing himself as the version of me with none of the complications. Once I saw that, more pieces clicked. He'd started dressing like me, which sounds petty until it doesn't. Same dark overshirts, same clean sneakers, same silver watch style after mine broke. He joined my gym for the location, then somehow knew 2 of the guys I used to grab smoothies with afterward. He followed Naomi on LinkedIn the week after I mentioned she was one of the only people in HR I trusted. Ava said the word I was avoiding. "He doesn't just want access to your life," she told me. "He wants your spot in it." Then Marcus forwarded me a photo from Doyle's, and Ryan was sitting in my usual seat. The motive didn't land all at once. It leaked out in pieces, ugly and pathetic and somehow worse because it was human. The first piece came from Marcus, who finally admitted Ryan had been talking about my promotion for months. "He acted like he was happy for you," Marcus said when we met in his car after work. "But every time your name came up, he'd make some comment about how people always assume you're the responsible one. He said you get handed trust before you've even earned it." I stared through the windshield at the rain. "Handed trust?" Marcus nodded. "He said guys like you walk into a room and people relax. He said he has to work 10 times harder for the same thing." That should have made me feel sorry for him. For about 10 seconds, it did. Then Marcus showed me the voice note. Ryan had sent it at 1:14 a.m., 3 weeks earlier after I lost the Fury pitch lead. His voice sounded half-drunk and mean in a way I had never heard directed at me before. "Daniel doesn't even know how lucky he is," he said. "He gets all this credit for being solid, but solid is easy when people expect the best from you. Some of us had to become likable to survive." He was born pre-forgiven. Pre-forgiven. I replayed that word until it went numb. The second piece came from my own missing notebook. I found photos of several pages in Ryan's cloud backup because he had once signed into his email on my iPad and never removed the account. The pictures were time-stamped the same night he dropped off soup. Alongside sketches of my Fury proposal, he had photographed a page where I'd written, "I think people trust me because I don't need much from them." When I read that line, I almost laughed. Ryan had needed everything from everyone: attention, access, affirmation, admiration, and somehow resented me for not asking loudly enough. That was the real motive. Ryan hated the version of me people felt safe around because it highlighted the performance he had to maintain. He didn't just want my promotion. He wanted the ease he imagined lived under my skin. Ava listened, jaw tight, then said, "So now you know why." I looked at the screenshots spread across my table and answered the harder question. Now I had to decide what to do with it. I could have gone straight to Naomi in HR with what I had, but history makes cowards out of otherwise practical people. Part of me still wanted a version of Ryan that would confess privately, apologize like a human being, and leave before I had to burn down 9 years of friendship in public. That fantasy lasted until the dinner. It was supposed to be casual. Marcus's delayed birthday redo at a steak place in Dublin. 6 people, low lights, overpriced cocktails. I almost skipped it, then decided I needed to see Ryan with the truth sitting in my pocket. He arrived 10 minutes late in a navy jacket I'd nearly bought myself last winter and acted like nothing had shifted. Hugged Marcus, made the server laugh, clapped me on the shoulder, and said, "There he is," in that same warm voice he used when he needed witnesses. For the first 20 minutes, I thought maybe he really didn't know I knew. Then Marcus mentioned the Fury account, and Ryan's eyes flicked to me so fast, it was almost mechanical. "You ever hear back about that?" Marcus asked. Before I could answer, Ryan cut in. "Honestly, probably for the best if Dan takes a lighter load right now." The table got quiet. I set down my fork. "What exactly do you mean by that?" Ryan leaned back, sympathetic already. "Nothing bad. You've just had a rough stretch." "A rough stretch you keep narrating for me." His smile never fully dropped. "See? This is what I'm talking about." I should have left then. Instead, I followed him when he excused himself to the parking lot. The second the door shut behind us, his face changed. Not monstrous, just tired, irritated. "You're making this bigger than it is," he said. "You told people I was unstable. I told people you were struggling. You stole from my apartment." His jaw locked. Careful. That one word chilled me more than yelling would have. Then he stepped closer and lowered his voice. "Do you know how many times I covered for you? How many people would have walked away if I hadn't softened the edges? You think they trust you because you're honest? They trust you because I taught them how to read you." For 1 second, I almost believed him again. Then Ava stepped beside me and said, "Good. Say that again." Ava saved me in that parking lot by doing exactly what I hadn't been able to do for weeks. She turned my panic into procedure. On the drive back to my apartment, she made me list what I had out loud like we were inventorying a crime scene. Anonymous messages, group chat screenshots, package room footage, cloud backups with photos of my notebook, Marcus's copy of the voice note, dates, times, phrases repeated too precisely to be coincidence. The next morning, I requested a private meeting with Naomi from HR. I trusted her because she had a reputation for being impossible to charm and allergic to drama. I brought a folder, my laptop, and enough shame to fill the conference room. Saying it out loud, "My best friend has been pretending to protect me while sabotaging me," made me sound unhinged even to myself. Naomi didn't react much, which helped. She asked for dates. She asked what was documented versus inferred. She asked whether Ryan had access to company materials through me. When I showed her the photos of my Fury proposal and his email backup and the messages where he described me as unstable to people tied to work, she went still in a way that felt more serious than outrage. "This is not interpersonal anymore," she said. "This is reputational interference with a workplace component." I almost laughed from relief. Not because it was funny, because it finally had a name. Ryan had been informally helping at our office events for months, charming clients and acting like a harmless +1 whenever someone needed an extra hand. Naomi told me our quarterly sponsor mixer was 2 nights away and he was on the guest list through an account director. If we were going to address this cleanly, it needed to happen somewhere controlled, with witnesses, documents, and no room for him to reframe it. So we built the trap around his favorite thing, an audience. Marcus agreed to attend and verify the voice note. Ava insisted on being there. Naomi reserved the presentation room off the main event floor under a fake client review. I sent Ryan one text that afternoon. "Need to talk before Thursday. Important." He replied in under a minute. Knew something was off. "Proud of you for reaching out." Thursday night, Ryan walked into the mixer smiling like he still owned the script. Naomi waited until the sponsor mixer had enough people to matter and not so many that the scene would spill out of control. Around 7:40, she asked Ryan, me, Marcus, and 2 account directors to step into the presentation room because there was a concern about shared materials. Ryan followed her in smiling, still playing helpful. He even held the door for Ava like he was some gentleman caught in a misunderstanding. The room smelled like dry erase markers and catered barbecue. A wall monitor glowed blue at the front. My pulse was so loud I could barely hear my own shoes on the carpet. Ryan sat down first. "What's this about?" Naomi didn't answer him. She looked at me and said, "Start with what is verifiable." So I did. Not the whole history, just the evidence. March 18th anonymous Instagram message warning a coworker that I was unstable. Screenshot on screen. March 11th group chat, where Ryan told friends I was spiraling and should be excluded for my own good. Screenshot on screen. March 21st security complaint that mirrored language he had used in texts to Marcus. Timeline on screen. Photos of my notebook pages in Ryan's cloud account. Timestamped 6:43 p.m. The same evening package room footage showed him leaving my building 43 minutes after saying he had already gone. Ryan laughed once. "You hacked my email? You left it logged into my iPad," I said. He turned to the account directors immediately. "This is insane. He's been obsessed for weeks. I've been trying to help him hold it together." Marcus leaned forward then, face pale but steady. "You sent me the voice note, Ryan." Naomi tapped the keyboard, and his voice filled the room. "Daniel doesn't even know how lucky he is. He was born pre-forgiven." For the first time, Ryan's mask actually slipped. Charm, then annoyance, then contempt. He looked at me with open hatred and said, "You want to know what your problem is? You let people think you're decent because you're quiet. That's not decency. That's branding." One of the account directors stood up so abruptly his chair scraped the floor. Naomi asked Ryan to hand over his event badge. He didn't move. Then Ryan made the mistake that ended any chance of denial. Ryan's mistake was simple. He reached for my phone. Not to call anyone. To snatch it out of my hand before Naomi could stop him. He lunged, missed, clipped the edge of the conference table, and shouted, "You've been recording me for weeks like a freak." It was a stupid thing to say, because nobody had mentioned the parking lot conversation in that room. But Ryan had just confirmed there was something worth recording. Security came in less than a minute later. The sponsor mixer outside had gone soft and strange, that unmistakable hush of people pretending not to eavesdrop while listening to every word. Ryan tried one more version of the story on his way out. "Daniel is not well," he said to anybody who would meet his eyes. "You're all watching a breakdown." But the timing was gone. Once people see the machinery, the trick stops working. The fallout started fast, and then kept unfolding for weeks. Naomi opened a formal investigation the next morning. My director, who had repeated Ryan's concerns about me in leadership meetings, had to sit through a review of why outside gossip had been allowed to shape staffing decisions. The Fury account was reassigned again. I wasn't fired, but I was put on temporary leave while HR sorted out the mess, which somehow felt both insulting and fair. Even when you're the victim of sabotage, the blast radius still hits your desk. Socially, things split down the middle. A few people called immediately to apologize. Their voices all carried the same awful mix of guilt and self-protection. Some disappeared instead, which honestly hurt less. Marcus kept showing up. Ava basically moved into my apartment for 4 days because she said I was one manipulative voicemail away from doing something noble and stupid. Ryan sent 3 texts before Naomi's no-contact directive took effect. The first said, "You left me no choice." The second said, "I never would have gone that far if you hadn't started pulling away." The third was just a photo of my old notebook sitting in his sink, soaked through and ruined. That one made me shake harder than the public reveal had. Then the police called about the key I never realized he'd copied. The police call was from a patrol officer in my district, and for half a second I thought something had happened to Ryan. Instead, the officer asked whether I knew a man who had been reported trying to enter my building's side door after midnight using a key that didn't work anymore. I had changed my locks that morning on Ava's insistence. My downstairs neighbor had recognized Ryan and called it in when he wouldn't leave. I gave a statement the next day. Trespassing warning. Documentation. Nothing cinematic. No dramatic handcuffs. No instant justice. Just one more ugly line added to the file of proof that I hadn't imagined any of it. That mattered more than I expected. Healing turned out to be embarrassingly practical. Change the locks. Block the number. Tell the building manager not to let him in. Start therapy. Sleep with your phone in another room. Stop rereading old texts looking for the exact sentence where friendship became strategy. Eat something that isn't coffee and adrenaline. Answer Ava when she asks if you've showered. Accept that closure is not a speech someone gives you. It's a routine you protect until your body stops bracing for impact. Therapy helped because my therapist didn't get distracted by Ryan's psychology. She kept bringing the conversation back to me. Why had concern always disarmed me so fast? Why did I confuse being understood with being safe? Why had I treated my ability to forgive as evidence of depth instead of a boundary problem? Those questions were brutal. They were also useful. Work slowly stabilized. Naomi made sure the investigation findings were documented formally, and my leave ended with my role intact. My director apologized in a conference room that smelled like printer toner and embarrassment. It didn't fix much, but it was something. Marcus and I rebuilt carefully, with more honesty and less automatic trust. Ava got to say, "I told you so," exactly once before I threatened to frame it and hang it in my apartment. The one boundary I put in writing was simple. Ryan was never to contact me again through friends, work, social media, or family. No reconciliation coffee. No final chance to explain. Then, 6 weeks later, a plain white envelope appeared under my door. The envelope had no stamp, just my first name in Ryan's handwriting and a hotel card folded inside. For a minute, I stood in my hallway staring at it, my keys still in my hand, feeling that old reflex kick in, the one that wanted to decode him, excuse him, understand him one final time. Then I carried it upstairs, sat at my kitchen table, and opened it with Ava on speakerphone because I was done being alone with his version of things. The note was short. "I never wanted your life. I wanted you to stop making mine feel smaller." That was it. No apology. No denial. No request for forgiveness. Just the most honest sentence Ryan had probably ever written to me. And even then it was built like a confession that still blamed the victim. I read it twice, then slid it back into the envelope and felt something unexpected instead of triumph. Relief. Not because he suffered. Not because I had won. But because the mystery was finally small enough to hold. Ryan didn't destroy parts of my life because he was some criminal mastermind. He did it because envy plus access is a dangerous combination, and I gave him both. That truth hurt my pride, but it also gave me my future back. Monsters are overwhelming. Patterns are manageable. A few months later, on the first Saturday, I realized I hadn't checked my phone for his name in days. I drove out to Alum Creek before sunrise with coffee in a paper cup and sat on the hood of my car while the water turned silver. The air was cold enough to bite. A fisherman farther down the bank kept recasting the same line with patient hands. For the first time in a long while, silence didn't feel like something stalking me. It felt earned. What I learned is simple, and I wish I had learned it earlier. The first red flag is usually not cruelty. It's curation. It's the person who always explains your own feelings back to you, who becomes the translator between you and everyone else, who makes themselves necessary in every conflict they claim to calm. Keep receipts, trust patterns over charm, and never let one person control the story of your life in every room. Emotionally, learn this faster than I did. Being loved is not the same thing as being observed closely.